Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Philanthropy. On today's episode, I want us to cover how to be more patient. So if you're here, then maybe you've learned that you could be working on your patience. And so I welcome you because I know this is a challenging area for many people, and also for myself. It was something that I wanted to work on and grow towards. And so I'm grateful that you've joined me today. So maybe we can talk about some ways that you could try things that could help you to develop your patience. Because I truly believe that a lot of the skills, and especially the ones that we're covering on philanthropy, are things that can be worked on. You don't have to feel that you were born patient or not, and it's just, something that may be elusive to you, because that's not true. We can all work on it and we can do a better job of it. And I know personally, this is something that I've grown in, and I still think that I could do some more work in it. And anybody who knows me, any of my close friends and family, know that I'm always on a self-improvement campaign of some sort. That's because there's so much to improve. I know how many flaws I have, and those are the ones that I'm aware of. That's not even the ones that other people notice that I haven't noticed. But the ones that I'm aware of, I definitely understand how our flaws can impact our peace and our joy. And if we're not working on eliminating those things, then we'll probably have more drama in our lives, unnecessary drama. And so here's to hoping that things can improve and you can have more patience in your life, just like me, hopefully. So one of the things that is definitely helpful when you're thinking about how to be more patient, because you're in that moment, something has happened, and this will tie into, some of the anger stuff that we did on an earlier episode on how to not be so angry. But it's in that moment when you recognize that you're being pushed to the limit, right? And maybe with patience, it's not as extreme. Like with anger, it's something that's really hit us hard. And so we have a very strong emotion. And with patience, I find that it's more of the little annoying things that we definitely need to be trying to focus on. And how do we get over those little annoying details of life? And usually, sometimes it's situational. It can be little things that happen. But a lot of times it's the people, definitely the people around us. And I do think that a lot of it comes from our own idealism, right? So I want you to just notice this. When you're in that moment, when, somebody has annoyed you, are you being idealistic? Do you have a belief or an expectation that this person should be a certain way and they're not? If you can answer yes to that, then that's maybe idealism. And I do find that a lot of our, issues with patience, a lot of our issues with anger come from the desire for control. We're wanting to control a situation. We're wanting to control the people around us. And so I want you to ask yourself that the next time somebody does something, they say something, and you find it annoying, if you feel that they need to behave this way, they should do this instead, then you need to stop and ask yourself something that I ask myself, like, who made me the boss of the world? And why does it have to be my way? I really firmly believe that if everybody did everything that we wanted and expected, we wouldn't be happier. We would just have a lot of robots around us. Yes, people, and our idea of things is often so limited in scope. It's limited to our likes and our dislikes, and let's be honest, those can be fleeting, they can be changing. But if we were to control the world, I don't think you would be more joyful. There's there'd always be something else that would be bugging you. So with that, in mind, we can't control other people, and we can only control our reaction and our response to people. As soon as you start to become aware of this, like a huge amount of things that were initially annoying you are probably going to disappear, because you're going to go, well, who made me boss of the world or God of the world? And you're going to start saying, okay, you know what? Maybe I need to do a slight attitude shift in this situation. Why can't this person show all of the colors of their life and the variety that makes them them? And why am I trying to control all of that? When you start to get out of the way and you start to see people as these multi-dimensional, interesting people, then we start to see, you know what? I'm super limited in my definition of what would make an amazing world. I'm not allowing room for people to be unique and different from that vision. So that's one thing, to just recognize our own fixed mindset that can be limiting us and creating a huge amount of the patience issues that we have. So, but if we're in that moment and when somebody has annoyed us, they've done something that we don't approve of or we don't like, this is where we're going to pause and we're going to take a moment to just breathe. We've done some of that on some earlier sessions where we just inhale and we exhale and we breathe. You could count to 10, you could take 3 deep breaths, but you want to give yourself space between the event, whatever happened, and your reaction. And if you do that, if you have a little bit of control in that moment, you'll be able to move from a reaction to a response. And that was something that we covered in the anger episode, that, if we are able to respond, we're activating our higher self, because a reaction always comes from our animalistic self. And, and that's maybe an instinct. And of course, that's always to protect your ego. So if we are giving ourselves space in that moment when somebody is irritating us, somebody is annoying us, something is annoying us, it could be, any number of things, then I want you to just give yourself a moment to just breathe, connect to your breath, and, inhale, exhale, count to 10. Like I said, you can take 3 breaths, 2 breaths, deep breaths. And then now you can say, okay, I'm trying to be more patient, right? Your goal is to be more patient. So then how can I respond in a way that allows room for this person to be who they are, and I'm not, trying to control them, but it allows us to respond with more kindness, compassion, and empathy, and all of those higher virtues that we want to embody. Now we have a moment where we can select, how do we want to be seen in this moment? How do we want to respond? And it's not going to be easy. I'm not going to lie. There's going to be days where, you just automatically go to reaction mode. And, we've talked a little bit about that in other episodes, that sometimes that's a result of, your basic needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maybe you skipped lunch and you're hangry. Maybe you're super tired, maybe, just a series of things went wrong this morning and now you're just kind of at your wit's end. A lot of things could have happened, and so you won't get this right every single time. But the more that you practice it, the more it becomes a habit. And the more that, something becomes a habit, then the more that becomes our character, right? And what we want to embody in this world. So give that a shot next time. Pause, reflect, and say, okay, how am I going to respond in this moment? Another thing that you could try is reframing the situation. And I know we've talked about this in a couple of episodes too, and it's how you look at something, right? So instead of thinking, let's say you're in a lineup and you're at a bank or somewhere, the grocery line, and it's so easy to go into the complaining mindset. And you stand in line for long enough with enough people will start complaining. They'll say, why aren't there more workers? And just any host of things that they can complain about. You want to try and get out of that mindset, out of the complaining mindset. Instead of thinking, why is this taking so long? You could be thinking of things like, maybe I needed a moment today. Like maybe I'm so irritable and impatient in this moment because I needed to breathe. Maybe I need to stop and I need a grounding exercise. Sometimes people forget that this is a really good opportunity for us to be mindful. And there's a grounding technique will help you with mindfulness. Of course, mindfulness is being very present. It's being in this moment. It is being aware of everything that's around us and not being pulled in, sucked into a negative mind frame because, we're lost in our thoughts and our judgments and our opinions. But what is true in this moment? And so, of course, there's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You could look around and you could see, okay, what are 5 things that I can see? And count them silently in your head. What are 4 things that I could touch physically? I could reach out and touch these things. What are 3 things that I can hear? So let's listen. What are 3 things that we can hear? What are 2 things that you can smell? And what is 1 thing that you can taste? So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you could do that simple grounding exercise. You could do a quiet little meditation while you're standing there in line. And so we can talk a little bit about the different kinds of meditations that you could do. So you're doing this silently. You don't have to do it verbally. And this is one that I really, really love. This comes from Blue Mountain Center for Meditation and Eknath Easwaran. And he's, the guru that I followed through his books when I first started meditation. He is someone that really promotes passage meditation. So passage meditation is you're repeating a passage over and over again in your head. And in the beginning, this might be a little bit more challenging, and maybe later on we can do another meditation, like a whole episode on passage meditation and mantras. But for this one, we'll keep it kind of brief. And so something that you could do for passage meditation is taking something very inspirational, something that could be, from scripture, and you're repeating it over and over again. And the thought is that the more that you repeat these passages, the more they burn into your consciousness, into your mind, and they start to drive your behaviors, which is really cool. And so one of the passages that I started off with was, of course, the St. Francis's prayer. And so St. Francis of Assisi, I think that's how you say it, he had the passage. Let's see if I can remember it right now, because I don't have anything in front of me, but I'll try it. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, please grant that I may not so much as seek to be. Uh-oh, now I forgot that part. See, and this is what will happen. I'm going to remember it later, but this is something that you could practice. And then normally what I do is I have them on my phone. And if I forget a line, then I'll go back and I'll, just practice that again. And I'll go, okay, so that was the line that I was missing. Maybe it's 1 line, maybe it's 2 lines. And eventually you just build until you have the whole thing. And, there was a time when I was so devoted to passage meditation that I probably had about 5 or 6 that I would rotate through and I would go through often. And it's really amazing because now you're in the grocery line or you're in the bank lineup, and this is this perfect opportunity for you to be practicing this passage meditation. You don't have to build any extra time into your day for it because it's already there. It's the moment, I did them quite often when I was driving. And so that's a good way to be using time when suddenly you're having to wait for something. Maybe you're in a doctor's waiting room, waiting for the dentist, and they start you off in one room, then they move you to maybe a back corner, and then you go to the office room. And so there's a lot of opportunities to be practicing that one. You could also do a mantra. And so mantras are just like, it could be one word, it could be like a really quick phrase. And one that would be really good in this moment, of course, because you're wanting to practice patience, then something that you could, easily construct in that moment is what you're wanting, right? Like, Lord, help me to be kind and loving and patient. And then that could be your mantra, and you're just saying that over and over again. Or, if you're not religious or spiritual, you could just say, help me to be kind, patient, loving. Or you could even just say, I just need to be more patient. I just need to be more kind. I just need to be more loving. However you want to construct your mantra. Again, a mantra is going to help you to embody a virtue or, signaling your devotion to, Creator. Like in a lot of the Hindu mantras, for instance, yogis will use the Lord's name in a different way. It'll be something like Rama, 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 and then they'll just say that over and over again, right? And that's one incarnation of God or Creator. And so you could choose whatever you like. And then, in that moment, just practice. Practice your passage meditation, practice your mantra, practice your breathing, practice your grounding. So there's a few things that you could try. This is one that I've been doing really a lot lately, and I've really enjoyed it. And it is practicing your patience muscles. And so this is where you're consciously, switching into a patience mindset. And this is where you're developing that ability to be patient. And so you're now going to make choices that make room for more patience. Let's say we're on a busy street and there's somebody waiting to turn and they're just pulling out of, let's say, a parking lot. And so they're not really at an intersection, but they're, just trying to pull out. And of course, it's a really super busy street that you're on. And you don't have to let them in because, you have the right of way. But if you could, you could just say, okay, I am wanting to work on my patience. So I'm just going to pause in this moment and I'm going to allow them to come in front of me. Or if you're in the grocery lineup, just allowing somebody to come in front of you because you've made that decision that I'm working on my patience. I know I can be highly impatient, and in this moment, I'm wanting more patience in my life. So I'm looking for opportunities to practice this because I know that if I put other people first, then I'm going to feel better about myself. Because that feeling where you had an opportunity, I know that has happened to me, where you've had an opportunity to allow somebody ahead of you to, be generous or be kind, and you didn't take that moment. You put yourself first, and then you drive away or you walk away feeling like, oh man, why am I such a crappy human? And then we go down the negative stream where we start thinking negatively about ourselves, right? And so this will allow us that opportunity to change how we're looking at ourselves too, right? Like, I want you to think a certain way about me. I want you to think I'm kind and generous and loving. But I also want to think that way about myself. I also want to think that I'm kind and generous and loving. And if I'm not living according to my own standards, then I won't even be meeting that expectation. I will not be fulfilling that desire of my own to be a human that I approve of. And so building this patience, building your patience muscles allows you to redefine who you are. You're giving yourself this opportunity to change the way you think about yourself. And if you've been somebody who has beaten yourself up for a long time, and people, my heart goes out to you if you do this, because It's not uncommon. Sadly, a lot of people think this way, and I catch myself doing it too all the time. If I do something dumb, then I automatically go to a judgment, and I'm like, "Oh, Jess, you're so dumb," or "That was so stupid," and then I really kind of get locked into that thinking that I'm dumb or I'm stupid, I'm not worthy, and I have to catch myself in those moments because we're not being kind and we're not being loving to ourselves, and we're going to automatically put a damper on our mood, and then other people are going to probably suffer as a result of it, because then we'll be more irritable, we're more likely to be impatient, and sometimes it just becomes this really negative cycle. So allowing yourself to practice this patience muscles really helps you to redefine who you are and who you want to be in this world. And so you're giving that gift to other people of your patience, but you're also giving it to yourself, where you're learning how to love yourself and be kinder to yourself. So I think that one is really nice. I'm constantly looking for moments like that too. And also I recognize too that when I'm practicing patience, I find that my heart rate, it really kind of calms down, because I'm working towards moving more slowly in the world, more consciously. And so I really find that my nerves calm down, everything calms down, and just becomes a little bit more beautiful, because I've made that effort and to really carve out time and space for this moment. And we don't do that because we're so busy with our to-do list. We're so busy with all the things that I need to accomplish in this world. And we just move at this frantic pace. And then it's so easy to be irritable, to be angry and short-tempered, and then not our best selves. Because when we snap, we know we've snapped, and it doesn't feel good. And we know that now people or animals or whatever around us is at the receiving end of our temper and our irritation. And we've created drama for sure, but we've also maybe severed relationships as a result of that. And then that creates more angst inside of us. And then there's a physical toll to that. So really saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to carve out time and space for this moment. I'm going to allow somebody else to come first, to come before me. And I'm going to do that as an act of kindness. And I'm going to do that as an act of, mindfulness. Like, I want to be present in this moment, because at the end of the day, the Buddhists say that this all we have is this moment, right? We don't have the past, we don't have the future, we just have this moment. So how do we, take that mentality or that approach to life and make this moment more meaningful? And if that's all you're doing is just allowing somebody to go ahead of you, then you're putting beauty into that moment. You're putting love and kindness into that moment. And so you've accomplished something really amazing. And then, you'll start to feel better. And the more that you start to do this, you'll see the atmosphere around you will change. People will become kinder to you because you've stopped and you've been patient. Of course, that's not the goal. The goal is not, to manipulate others. Like, we're not doing these things purely for how other people think of us. We're doing it because of what we want to think of ourselves. But the reality is that, like I've said before, we are energy balls, and we're constantly taking in energy and absorbing other people's energy, and vice versa. They're taking that energy from us also. So when you take a moment and you pause and you give somebody that patience, now in that moment, they're grateful to you, and they want to also be patient, and they also want to be kinder. It's like the whole pay it forward situation. If you've ever paid it forward for coffee or whatnot, somebody does something nice for us, and then we want to do something nice for somebody else. If somebody has embodied patience right in front of us, then we naturally, humans are creatures of habit and mimicking. We definitely are mimickers. That when somebody sees an act of patience, it stays with them. Maybe they're not always conscious of it, but sometimes they are. They really notice it and recognize it and are so grateful to you for that. And it stays with them. And then even if it's not in that moment where they pay it forward, later on in another moment in their lives, they might say, you know what? I remember the person who did this. They were very kind and patient when everything went wrong. Maybe my cart tipped over and everything spilled and I held up the line and people, helped me and they were really kind about it and they didn't judge me. And now I just definitely want to do the same thing for others. So you could be spreading some goodness too, just by taking a moment to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to just be a better human in this moment. I'm going to be more patient and kind. And you never know what the result of that will be. And so we talked a little bit about this, but I definitely want to make more of a point of it to talk to yourself with compassion, right? So, I shared with you that it definitely happens where I catch myself talking negatively about myself. And, we have to remember that this is a skill that we're learning and we're not going to be amazing at it immediately. If you are, that's wonderful. I'm super proud of you if that happens for you. But for most of us, it's going to take practice. We're going to have to, be honest with ourselves of where we fell short, where we could do more work, and being reflective of that, and really taking stock of those moments where we weren't our best self. But instead of beating ourselves up, are we saying, hey, you know what, Jess, it's going to take yourself a little bit longer to develop this skill. And, it's okay. It's going to take a little bit. And so you didn't get it right then, but maybe we can sit and look at how we could do it a little bit better in the future. And so really start to be kind to yourself. Like if you were having this conversation with a friend and your friend was beating themselves up because they weren't the perfect model of patience, what would you say to that person? You'd probably have some sage words of advice and you would probably be very encouraging to them, uplifting. How do we turn that around and turn it on ourselves so that we can do the same thing? We can be encouraging and uplifting and saying, maybe I wasn't really good at it this last time, but I'm going to try again next time. I definitely have strategies that I could be trying. We've mentioned a few of them. And next time, when there's that moment, when I need to be patient, when I'm in traffic, and traffic is a big one, right? Like, let's be honest, that's where you see all the, I'm not going to say all of the ugliness of the world, but a lot of it. And so when we're in traffic the next time we're driving, how can I be kinder and more patient? And even if somebody cuts me off and zooms around me and flips the bird, then how can I just be kind and patient and understanding and recognize that there's somebody that needs to work on patience also. It's not just me, it's also that person. And maybe they're not aware of that yet. They haven't listened to this podcast yet. So maybe share it with them. No, I'm just kidding. But we can't control what other people are going to do and how they're going to respond, just ourselves. But just know that those choices you make are going to influence others. They're definitely going to be looking at, wow, how did you remain so calm and composed and kind and patient in that moment? People will notice for sure. But it's really important that you are learning how to be kind and patient to yourself and really sharing that spirit of patience with yourself as you're becoming more patient. I know that sounds hard to wrap your head around, but we do need to be patient with ourselves when we're trying to learn more patience. And so just be a friend to yourself and say something kind even when you screw up. As long as you're starting to bring awareness to it, you'll get better, because nobody wants to bring awareness to our faults and then just stay there. It feels too ugly. So the more awareness we're bringing to our responses and our behaviors, the more that we are likely to want to change them and do something good differently. So There's another one for you. Be more patient and talk to yourself with compassion. Here's another one that I really like. Keeping a patience journal. So in this one, you could be writing in your journal and you could be talking about those exact moments, right? Like, so let's reflect on the day and let's think about those moments where I was really not very patient. And why was I not patient? Was I putting myself first? Was I in a time crunch? What was going on in that moment? And what can I do differently next time? Like if I'm in a time crunch and I'm driving, is it because I jam-packed my life so much that I didn't leave an adequate enough time for driving slowly, cautiously, carefully? And if that's the case, then maybe it's time to reevaluate our schedules and what we have going on. Time to trim the fat and reorganize some things that are taking up a lot of our time, and maybe we could be reducing our time on these things like social media. I'm not going to lie, that's a huge time suck, and it doesn't always bring value to our lives. I mean, sometimes it's great. There's a lot of funny memes and things like that, but if it means 5 or 10 minutes less of that kind of stuff and more time for driving so that we can be patient, then let's rearrange our schedules a little bit differently. So when you're reflecting in your patience journal, really consider all of the things that are leading to these impatient moments, right? Really take stock of how can we do things a little bit differently. I know for myself, that was definitely something that was an issue before, when I used to have way too much going on in my life, and I had to start, reducing things and taking things out of my life to give more time to the things that really mattered to me. And, it was more important to me that I was a better human when I was driving, and I wasn't like, endangering the lives of other people. So I said, okay, then I need to be able to build more time into my driving schedule. And for someone like myself, I was like always chronically late. And I recognized that I had to really be honest with myself. Like, where am I spending my time? Why am I always late? Why am I always leaving my house too late? And now I've already ramped up the pressure as soon as I get into my vehicle, because I have less time than I need to get where I need to get safely. And so Patience Journal is going to help you to be really honest with yourself, but again, try not to beat yourself up about this. This is not an exercise of self-torture. It's really helping us just to take stock of what choices we're making that are leading to the problems in our life, and what choices we could make that could help with that patience. So give that one a shot. I think that one is a really beautiful exercise in how to become more patient. And of course, we can definitely be realistic with ourselves, right? So analyzing, what are your expectations? When we have really super high expectations of the amount of things that we can jam pack into our life, then sometimes that's where we get into trouble, right? And so we have to be careful, that because we only have so much time in our lives, in our day, and I know it's really important. I think we're in like an overachiever society, and people are really obsessed with how do we become so successful in the shortest amount of time, because I need to be wealthy and famous and all of these things. And it doesn't make us better humans when we're jamming so much into our lives that, we become these, I don't know, impatient, unhappy, miserable messes. And so, if we are really being more realistic about, time and, what we can fit into it, sometimes that's going to help us to be a little bit more patient. And this is funny, I remember, and I've never ever forgotten this. When I was in grade 10, I took this accounting class, and it's kind of weird because it was accounting, but in this accounting class, my teacher wanted us to take stock of our lives, and we had to like keep schedules and that kind of thing, and we had to account for like every single minute of our lives, and we had to do it for like the whole day, 24 hours. Like, what are we doing every single minute? It was kind of a little bit insane, because we don't look at time that way really, but we did in that assignment. And I remember when we had finished it, I mean, I think the lesson was that like none of us had accounted for accidents, right? Or any kind of flops and failures, disasters. And so then I always remembered that going forward, if something like spilled and broke, let's say I knocked over a mug, and of course have such a tight time schedule, and I have every minute accounted for, and now I have just created a disaster in my office. Maybe the mug spilled coffee all over some papers, an important presentation, and it's created this mess, and I'm about to have somebody walk in my office for a meeting. And whenever something like that has happened, I always think about that assignment. And I always think, oh my gosh, I didn't factor in time for accidents to happen, and they do. And this is a little bit strange, but this is very Jess, and so I'm going to include it also. I factor in moon phases. I really do. I remember when I was a principal, I was telling this to a few different staff, about things that I noticed, when it was a full moon or a new moon, and that things just kind of went always a little bit sideways and crazy. And because I worked with the police so closely, I remember saying that to them and the ambulance guys that, gosh, is it a full moon? And they always agreed with me that people are a little bit wilder, especially around a full moon. And so when they said it, I was like, okay, maybe I'm onto something. So a friend of mine, one of the teachers, had said, what would be really interesting is if you track it. And I said, well, like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, every moon phase, just track what you notice. And I was like, hey, that's a really kind of interesting idea. And so I would start tracking things, and maybe we'll do another episode later on down the road about moon phases, because I'm really big on that. And so I noticed things about people's behavior, and when we're more likely to have accidents, when things are going to be smoother, and that sort of thing. And so that's what I started to do. And sure enough, right, like I would notice, of course, full moons definitely can impact how people behave and our risks for getting hurt or injured or accidents and that kind of thing. Whereas like a new moon, you might see more smooth sailing. Things are calmer. There's a calmer energy. And here's a funny one, like first quarter, I noticed that women particularly are most likely to pick a fight with their partner around first quarter. and I don't know why, but I've tracked the amount of people that would be in my office and they would be complaining about their partner and having a difficult conversation, or they had a fight or something. It was generally almost, or wanted to break up, generally almost always on first quarter. And so, these are factors too that are going to impact people's behavior. And if it's impacting their behavior, then these are going to be times where we have to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to have to be more patient at this time. Like for instance, on a full moon day like today, actually, because last night was a full moon, I did notice that I was a little bit more short-tempered this morning, and I had to say, I didn't prepare myself the way that I normally do. When I know there's a full moon, I'm a little bit more gentle with myself because I know that shit is going to hit the fan, pardon my French, but I know that people are a little bit crazier. And so something that I do to prepare myself is that I lock in with a really good meditation the night of, the morning of, when I practice a lot more mantras or, passage meditation and things that are going to help me to be more patient, because I'm going to have more opportunities for impatience if I haven't prepared myself. And today I didn't, and today, this morning, I had a couple incidents where I was very irritated. I was short on time, and I had to sit and go, hey, wait a minute, Jess. You're reacting to situations that happened and accidents that have happened, maybe, but you haven't prepared yourself, and you know better. And I know better, right? And so in those moments, I'm like, okay, Jess, you know what? Like, forgive yourself, but maybe that's something that I'll do this afternoon, that maybe I'll dedicate some time to meditation, because it's not just the day of full moon where, people are going to be a little bit cuckoo crazy. Sometimes it's a few days before, sometimes it's a few days after. Those impacts are still there. And so I think that's something that I will definitely do, dedicate a little bit more time to making sure that I am prepared to meet the day and meet people with kindness and patience. Even though I wasn't the prime example of it today, the day's not over, right? And so I can still do more. I can still do my part to restore the balance, restore the harmony and peace into my life. And part of that is recognizing that it's not over. There's time. There's lots of time. We have opportunities to practice. And so I hope that these strategies help you. And if you have any ideas, you have things that you do that I haven't mentioned, I would love to learn. I love people who share tips and strategies for things like this. How do we become more patient? Because it's something that I definitely have noticed as time goes on, we need more and more of it. I don't know. People are a little bit more fast-paced right now, and so there's a lot of opportunity to practice this stuff, and I hope you do, because the more people who practice patience, the more we learn from others on how to be better at it, and the more that we see examples of it in society, which we need. We definitely need a lot more kindness and patience in this world. So thank you for joining. I really had a wonderful time talking about this one, because I really love this topic. And I think, if I can learn how to be more patient and tolerant and compassionate with myself and with others, then I enjoy life more. And I hope you do too. So thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.